hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of In the Spotlight. I am very excited tonight. Of course, my name is Mike Kenichi, and our guest, I've been a fan of his since probably 1987. He has been on so many successful series in his life. China Beach, Spin City, Arliss. He also did films such as Hamburger Hill, Running on Empty. He's written a ton of stuff. He is just a talent that we've had in TV for over 35 years. It's my pleasure to introduce to you the one and only Michael Boatman. And Michael, this is a real honor for me, so thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you so much, Mike. It's great to be here. Wow, who are you in that interview of that intro? It's like, who's he talking about? Oh, me. Oh, okay. I guess he's right.
Well, it's well deserved. But Michael, let me ask you this: you grew up in Chicago, if I'm not mistaken. Correct?
I did, absolutely.
Yeah. And I had a friend, and I still talk to him here and there, and he grew up in Chicago. And let me tell you, all he ever did, he's lived in Connecticut for over 50 years now, but man, he still can talk about Chicago and how rewarding it was for him to grow up in that city. Just talk about growing up in Chicago a little bit.
Well, I grew up on the South Side. It's interesting because I always said Chicago is kind of it's a huge city, but in some ways there's a small town feel to the people. Chicagoans, are always, sensitive about being called the second city. And there's always sort of a rivalry between, say, LA. I mean, I always remember people saying things about other cities like, oh, if you're from LA, you're nuts, you're fruits and nuts. And if you're from New York, you're rude. You're just rude and you're mean. And I've lived in both those other cities, and I absolutely have come to find it's not true. People are, typically pretty great. I mean, they want to be, of course there are weirdos and strange types everywhere, but I always felt like Chicago was the city that kind of had a little bit of I don't know, not an inferiority complex so much as a need to, prove, we're the real deal. We're the real city, So I love all three. I think all three of the majors, cities, I think that each one sort of had, New York has an energy that you just can't. I've been there for 27, 28 years now. I've lived there in New York. You can't beat the energy and the sort of vibrancy of what just happens every day in that city. LA, of course, California, the unbelievable weather, the mountains, the ocean, all of the things people say. And Chicago, one of the greatest cities for food ever. I mean, when I go back, I was just back there recently for a friend's birthday, and I went to some sort of, great places in the city. And it's like, holy smokes, I forgot about how, just great the food is here. And what a great city it is in the summer, for instance. Wintertime, both Chicago and New York are.
Yeah, that could be rough.
Yeah, it can be rough. So weather-wise, LA beats the other two. Food-wise, Chicago. Energy, New York.
Right. So let me ask you, Michael.
Obviously,
Chicago is a very big baseball city. Were you a fan of the Cubs or the White Sox at all?
I had to be. I was not a big sports fan, but because I lived with my grandparents, and my mother and my grandfather was a Sox fan. So, to me, the Sox. I mean, the Cubs as well. I think I liked the Cubs because I always felt like they were more of an underdog. Like the Sox were like sort of the big, big sort of important. I mean, the Cubs, of course, are important too. I always felt like. I think the Cubs just had more, I felt more sort of related to the Cubs. But officially, it's like every house back then had its official newspaper, and you didn't dare bring the other newspaper. My family, we liked the Chicago Sun-Times versus whatever the other papers were at the time. And it's the same with sports. So, and since we had two baseball teams, it was officially White Sox, unofficially under the table Cubs.
Right.
Is that not the middle enough?
Yeah, you broke it down great. I appreciate it. So, Michael, I remember hearing Ron Howard talk one time. He had been an actor for many years, Andy Griffith, Happy Days. But he said the biggest reason he wanted to get into directing and stuff is he would just see the way people would be in movie theaters, and they would just see certain movies like on the waterfront and how fascinated and how in awe they were of the movie. And he said to himself, you know, this is something I want to do someday. So let me ask you, was there something about acting, like when you were a young kid, did you watch certain TV shows or films where you were like, you know what, I want to be on the big screen someday?
Wow. Close, actually. It was more theater for me. I didn't come from an artistic family in any way. We didn't have artists in our family. We weren't theater goers. But for some strange reason, Chicago had this really great public television station, WTTW, Channel 11. I'm not even sure if it's still there or if it's a super station now or whatever, but they had, back then they played all of these great old sort of almost anthology series like great performances, masterpiece theater, things like that. Somehow I think watching a production of maybe Julius Caesar, for some reason, I don't know why that stands out in my mind. Like this particular Friday night, it was late. I was, I don't know, 10. Nothing else was on. And I don't know, I sort of stumbled across this. So for me, Channel 11 PBS now, I guess it's called. But for me at that time, that was where kind of like old, boring, weird stuff plays, stuff that I wasn't interested in. But I can tell you what hooked me. There was a great performances production of Dracula. It starred the wonderful French actor Louis Jourdan as Dracula. And because first and foremost, I've always been a sci-fi horror.
Right. Which you've done a lot of writing for too.
Yeah. I was interested to see what this Dracula was going to be like. God, I must have been, I don't know, it was in the late 70s, I think. I was definitely a kid. I was so terrified by that production. And they played it every year around Halloween. And I would watch it every single year. That then led to seeing a commercial for a show also on PBS at the time called Doctor Who.
Right. Yep.
And at that time, the fourth Doctor, Tom Baker, was the Doctor. Historically, the most popular, most beloved actor to play the role. I discovered Doctor Who, and that was it. But once you're hooked on one show on PBS, you learn about other shows. So I think it was this Julius Caesar performance, and I want to say I think Derek Jacobi, the actor Derek Jacobi, played Julius Caesar in it, and I was so captivated by it. I was also a big Monty Python fan, and if there's one show that I attribute my wanting to become an actor, it's probably Monty Python's Flying Circus. They were shocking, they were hilarious. Of course, all of them were great, but I really responded to John Cleese, like I think a lot of people do, in his funny walks and his rage. And so by the time I had figured out that I liked or might be interested in doing something on the stage, which was in high school, I started this audition. And I actually started the audition. I didn't even want to be an actor. I just wanted to, I wanted to meet girls, which is
right.
Which is a common thing actors will tell you. And this one particular girl had sort of invited me to audition for the school play. And I said, yeah, sure, without even thinking anything about the acting, just knowing that she was going to be there. And then I get there to the audition later that afternoon, and they hand me this paper, and I didn't even know what it was called, a play.
Yeah.
And they say, okay, read these lines. And I thought, what is this? But there's the girl sitting up there, and she's smiling and looking at all the guys that are going to audition. So strangely enough, something John Cleesian came out of my mouth, or something that might have come from a classical performance on. I think the play was, I was required to do a British accent, and I just fell back on Cleese, and that was it. Somehow it worked. I got the part, and then I discovered, wow, I really like this. This is fun. and still having no idea at the time that I was going to do it professionally. You know, it was just sort of, it had become a hobby. That realization came later in college.
Wow. And correct me if I'm wrong, you went to Western Illinois University. And,
Yes, sir.
you know, and the thing about that too, Michael, is I think you graduated there around like 1986, somewhere
Yep,
around there. And
exactly.
like 10 years later, you're getting a, you know, big time alumni achievement award from them in 1997. So that's pretty impressive that only 10 years out of that university and they honored you like that. So that just says a lot of what they felt about you and, you know, how invaluable you were to their university.
Well, I got to tell you, the program that I entered in 1982 as a freshman, by then I had sort of thought, yeah, maybe I'll major in this and then I'll teach. I'll, you know, go on and get my master's and then teach in university, because that was my only experience of the theater, and I loved it. What came next was 4 years of grueling, sometimes, you know, heartbreaking work. I have always said to any parent or any prospective student of a college who's thinking about majoring in drama, where do you get to do the work? You know, a lot of places, I have friends that have gone to all the big fancy conservatories, Juilliard and Yale and all these places. And the thing they have always told me about those programs, for instance, is that, oh, you do maybe 5 shows. You know, I don't know if that's correct, but I'll put it this way. By the end of my senior year, I had been involved in 75 productions, acting,
Wow.
obviously, in most of them, small parts, medium-sized parts, big parts, comedies, dramas, classical pieces, African-American stuff, because we have the Gwendolyn Brooks Cultural Center, and one of my favorite professors in the drama department ran that institution as well. So there was a little feedback between the African-American students and this other, the Gwendolyn Brooks Cultural Center. So I had such an in-depth experience of theater that I came out feeling pretty confident in what my skill sets were as an actor. I love words. I love comedy. So it also afforded me the opportunity to perform at a sketch comedy troupe that we formed there on campus. So I'll always speak highly of Western Illinois University and their drama program. And I've kept in touch with some of the, you know, some of the faculty over the years. And it really set me up for, you know, what I think of as success, in the sense that I didn't have any idea about TV or movies. That to me was not acting that I might be connected to, because it just wasn't. That was something that happened in Hollywood or England or whatever. But then I ended up auditioning for a film in 1986, and I got it. My first audition for a film,
Hamburger Hill. Yeah.
And suddenly, now, you mean I can pay my rent doing this? So, and then you know, the rest, as they say, is history. So.
Right. And people don't realize, I think sometimes, Michael, that nobody just comes out of nowhere, and, you know, unless maybe you're like The Rock or somebody like that. But most of the time you have to put the work in somewhere. And, you know, I really believe that, you know, I was talking to Al Sempienza, and he told me a great story how when he was in his acting class, the teacher wouldn't even look. If they caught you yawning, they sent you home. They wanted you to be alert. You know, if I'm boring you that much and you're not willing to learn, get out of my class. So
get out.
People don't realize that part of it, that there were no easy shortcuts. You had to really, you know, climb stair by stair to get where you wanted to be.
Yeah, it's really true. I mean, my program, the program I graduated from, for instance, they had cuts. You know, at the end of every year, they would talk to students and say, we think you should. They'd either say, we think you probably should, you know, do something else, which was a kind and generous way of saying, yeah, you ain't got it, kid.
Right.
You know, go on to another realm of some kind of whatever. But which also didn't mean you couldn't do theater. It just meant this particular group of acting professors didn't believe you possessed whatever they thought was necessary to be a quote unquote successful actor. Sometimes they were wrong, sometimes they were right. With me, they were right. They said, keep going, we think you got it, and they would give you but you're a terrible dancer. Work on your dance,
Right.
And I think that's actually a mercy for kids who may not necessarily feel that they have the agency to be able to say out loud, I don't think I like this, or I don't think I'm very good at this, and I don't know, maybe I really like this girl I met over in the biology department, and then she said something that triggered me and made me think maybe I want to be, a lot of times just forward momentum alone in college becomes sort of all important. And what I later came to realize was kind of a blessing was that here was a group of faculty in an academic environment, obviously not a professional one, who could say gently, okay, you're not making progress in acting and movement, whatever it is, whatever their metrics were. And it gave kids a way out, basically. Yeah. I think that acting in all of its forms, whether you're talking about feature films, TV shows, the theater, particularly, I'm not going to lie and say it's easy. I had, and that there are definitely dues that have to be paid. And as you said a few minutes ago, you don't just sort of appear and are successful. For me, the dues I paid were those 75 shows.
Yeah.
And of course there were times, and there are still times right now, we're in the midst of a huge strike.
Right.
And it's tough because, daddy's going into the savings and to pay college tuitions and mortgage and all of that stuff. So it's never been an easy road, but I think like anything else, anything worth doing is tough. And if you love it, it carries you through the times that aren't so good.
Right, exactly. And when you pay your dues and great things happen to you, that's, like I said, it makes it so much more rewarding. And early in your career, I mean, there was that finals competition at the Kennedy Center, and you won the prestigious Irene Ryan Award for Best Supporting Actor. And I mean, you know what? You look back on it, that was like almost 40 years ago, but I still think that's probably something you're very proud of, because that was like a start to, what? I'm really going to do something special in this business when you're being honored like that and being recognized.
It was all of that and more because again, like I said, when we started talking, I didn't come from a place where, people did this stuff. I came from a place where people worked at the post office or people drove buses. My grandfather was a Chicago bus driver for, my whole life. Hardworking, working class folks, not a lot of sort of pretense or illusions about greatness or anything. And so it was everyone in my family at one point or another sort of gave me that sort of look of, you want to be an actor? What does that, what? And even I didn't really know at the time. I just knew I'd found a love for the theater, and I still have it. I can watch actors. The show that I was on just last, the Good Fight, for instance.
Right.
Occasionally, I would forget my lines looking at the other actors, looking at Christine Baranski in a scene with her, because I would just be so enchanted by the whole process and her talent that hey, Boatman, it's your line. What? Oh, sorry. Listen, because she is so good. Oh my God, that guy's really good. Am I that good? Can I, so I'm fascinated by it. My kids laugh at me today. We can go see a high school production of one of their friends or college production or whatever. And, I'm just as wrapped up in it as I am if I were watching something on Broadway or on the big screen. So like I said, I'm lucky that I found something that I love to do and that I love to challenge myself to sort of try to get better.
Right. And one of the things too, Michael, is the acting coaches you have along the way, the people that kind of, guide you and teach you and prepare you. And I think about I believe you studied with Jane Brody, who's just phenomenal. And just talk about that a little bit, because I mean, you're learning from the very best right there, and
Yeah.
it can only just be so invaluable to an actor's career, working with her.
Jane Brody discovered me, as they say. That always sounded very arrogant when I would hear other people say it, or when I hear some aspiring actor in a movie say, they discovered me. But she really did. I was still in college. Jane, as a casting director, she was both a casting director and a great acting teacher in Chicago. Jane did what now I think lots of casting directors do, which is go to local universities and colleges to sort of see what what's out there potential wise. Who can I cast in this movie, or who, and Jane came and noticed me as we did auditions, sort of a mock audition for her with material that we prepared. And she pulled me off to the side at the end of this huge session and literally said something like, I don't know if she said, "You got it," but it was something like, "Hey kid, when you get to Chicago, and you're gonna come to Chicago, give me a buzz." Okay, which was great. What they don't tell you about is how you immediately start losing friends among the kids who didn't get invited to come to Chicago. And it's the same. It could be New York. It could be, any college theater atmosphere. But so encouraged as I was, which is such a huge word for me, Mike, in the sense that my career has come about, I think, because I was encouraged by powerful people whom I respected and who were really good at their jobs. Casting directors like Jane, agents like my first agent, Harrice Davidson of the Harrice Davidson Agency in Chicago. My very first acting teacher, Gene Kozlowski at Western Illinois University. Someone, just that right person at the very right moment, just to go, yeah, kid, you can do this. It's so critical and so crucial. And it has been for me. So I've always made it a point to try to be encouraging. If I believe someone was talented and had potential for bigger or better things, if I see them in a play somewhere or whatever, I've always tried to sort of give back in that way. But working with Jane was great because now I'm out of college. She also happened to need an assistant, which I think she offered me the job also so I could sort of pay for the acting classes, and it was great, and because I got to see actors and auditions from the side of a casting director or agent or producer's perspective now, because I'm sitting next to one of the biggest casting directors in Chicago, and I'm hearing her comments. Oh, that kid was so rude. No, toss his picture, or oh, she's great. Check her. Make a check for her. We'll call her for the next project. So that kind of gave me an insider's view of kind of mainly what not to do in an audition. Like, don't be obnoxious, smile, shake hands, look like a person that, people might enjoy working with. And most importantly, of course, be prepared. Because I heard her tear a lot of actors apart. That kid barely knew his lines. Or, oh my God, what an awful, choice. He's clearly a straight man, but he picks this comedy piece, and he's not funny. I mean, just things like that. So I always looked at those things as sort of ways that the universe was saying, go forward, young man, keep going. Right. And so I'm eternally Georgia. I'm actually watching a friend's dog. I'm in LA at the moment. Right. And I'm house sitting, but part of the deal for free room and board is Georgia, leave it. Sorry.
And the thing is too, Michael, while maybe at the time when somebody's a young actor or actress, they might take that personally, but I think in time you really realize that people like Jane, they have to be intense with you sometimes, or they have to be a little over the top, because it's not going to be easy in the real world when you're trying to find a job or trying to get, a film or a TV series, whatever it is. So they're trying to prepare you that, listen, if you don't give your very best here, you're not going to make it. but
Yeah.
you learn to realize that it's not personal. They're just trying, they don't have nothing against you. They
No.
have something against your acting if you're not doing what they're asking you to do.
Absolutely. And it is a favor in a way, because you're right. It's not easy. I've been doing this professionally now 37 years. I certainly can claim, a level of success, but there are disappointments. I just auditioned for a show. First of all, I auditioned, which I don't do a lot because I've been on TV for a long time and people know, hey, that guy or that guy
Right.
from Spring City or that guy from Harlem, we want him or something like him. But sorry, got a phone call. But yeah, it's even with the success I've had, of course, there are things like what's happening now, the writers and SAG after a strike, the actors being on strike to support the writers and our own issues as well. And again, I think that love for the process and love for the, whether you want to call it the art or the craft of acting, I really do love what I do. And my history has sort of unfolded in a way that, yeah, okay, I have a certain degree of whatever you want to call it. I don't want to call it mastery because I feel like I'm still learning. And as I get older, you also change as an actor. Certain things that I couldn't do, obviously, when I was 20, certain roles or even a certain kind of performance, a certain kind of acting that I wasn't comfortable enough or able to do. But after 30 years, 4 kids, and mortgages and all of that stuff, all of that plays into your product. And I hate the way that people talk about creative endeavors these days. I just use the word product, which I think is horrible. It's like people who talk about how they are now a brand.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff just, it really, but we're all kind of in a corporate world now, Mike, whether we think we are or not. But
yeah.
And so I say product because, yeah, even an actor, you are offering your skills, your talents to a prospective employer. Now, whether they like you, love you, hate you, you're wrong for the part, it's almost immaterial. I've always said I want to be able to make sure that I give everything I've got in that room, or now more frequently on camera, because you're auditioning like you and I are talking on Zoom now. This is auditioning now, which is very weird.
Yeah.
But I want to be able to walk out of the room knowing I at least did my best. And but it took a long time to get to that point because, as you said just a second ago, the first 20 years of my life, it was personal. Oh, they don't like me, or when I've later learned it's not personal. You're just not what they were looking for. They were looking for the guy they found. So learning not to take it personal it took me a while. And I had been on a couple of shows, successful, but still, I think it's rejection. And now rejection for me is, okay, next audition, and because I write a lot, I write short stories, they get rejected all the time.
Yeah.
I think that the course of my writing experience came at a good time because I was already sort of hardened to the ideas of rejection from my acting career. So when I got that first correspondence from an editor who said, "Oh, this story's not quite for us, but hey, we'd love it if you submitted something else," there was a moment where I thought, "Oh, I'm no good. I'm terrible. I'm awful. And then I went, "Oh, wait, I know this. It wasn't for them." Okay, great. It's
And you move on. Yeah.
And you move on.
Right. And speaking of which, I mean, again, you paid your dues. You went to, Western Illinois University. You learned, and like I said, you did a lot of stuff. 75 films in 4 years, or 75 productions. Plays, yeah, in 4 years. But then you get this great role on Hamburger Hill, Motown, and I mean, right off the bat, like that's a pretty big deal for a guy who's in his first feature film. That's really big. So talk about that a little bit.
Well, I was working with Jane Brody, and I hadn't secured an agent yet. I hadn't even auditioned very much around Chicago at the time. This would have been in 1986 because I graduated in 86 and went to work for her that same summer, preparing to move to Chicago. Because where I grew up on the south side and then out in the south suburbs. So after college, I was moving into the city, you know, proper, with some of my college friends. She talks. One day I get to work. She says, "Oh, there's this production coming into town I'm working on, and you're perfect for one of the roles, and I want you to take a look at it." And it was the role of Motown. Who tells a funny story in the movie about him having been so hardened by the war in Vietnam that when he got home, all he could talk about at the Thanksgiving dinner table was F you and curse and swear and all of that stuff in front of his mother and parents. But I liked the role. I didn't really understand what I was reading because I hadn't read many movie scripts then, so it was very what and who, the camera's moving, and they were describing technical things that I didn't know because I didn't study that. I'm a theater major, not a film major. Right. But anyway, the parts that contain my character, you know, were compelling, and I read it, and I worked with Jane on the audition. I'm pretty sure, and I auditioned, and I think 2 weeks later she got a call. And that I had gotten the part, and I hadn't yet started to expect things in a positive way. I think I expected more negative things than, you know, oh, I'm going to audition and I'm never going to get this. This is, you know, who does movies? That's not a thing, you know. But then I got it, and it was definitely one of those moments. One of those triumphant moments in life where, you know, right then, if you could look at it from a greater perspective, you go, this is pretty good. This is as good as it gets. I mean, you know, I literally jumped for joy. I literally, you know, what, you know, just sort of, and I was over the moon for half an hour, you know, before I could sort of calm down and start to think about. I mean, it meant we were going to be in the Philippines for 4 months. I'd never left the country at that point. You know, I was going to be meeting all these young guys. And that's kind of the great thing about movies like that, even today. If you go back and you look at the cast of Hamburger Hill, you know, half of us did pretty well. I mean, Steven Weber and Don Cheadle. And Don Cheadle had the smallest part in the film. And now he's an Avenger. But, you know, Courtney B. Vance, Dylan McDermott, you know, a lot of guys who went on to bigger things.
Yeah, well, I mean, Courtney was tremendous as Johnny Cochran and the People versus O.J. Simpson. I mean, that was a great movie, and he killed it in that movie. He was really good in that movie.
Yeah, he absolutely did. And we're all still friendly. We all still, you know, well, we don't hang out occasionally because everybody's gotten married, had kids. One of the actors has actually passed away, Tim Quill, who was kind of the guy we thought, funny enough, he played the character Beletsky, and we thought this guy's the next Tom Cruise. I don't even know if Tom Cruise was a thing then, but whoever it was at that moment, you know, this handsome Irish kid, these luminous blue eyes, and the camera loved him, as they used to say, and he passed away like 3 years ago after a long battle with cancer. So, but it's just that sort of feeling of connection to him after many years. We still have it. Like I said, most of us are still friendly. If one guy doesn't directly communicate with another, he communicates with one of the guys who does, you know what I mean? So there's a loose sort of, but eternal, you know, network of friends from that experience. It's pretty great.
Right. Now, it still shocks me to this day that China Beach only lasted 3 seasons, because I'm going to tell you right now, that show was as good as any show. And I mean, it was such a refreshing show. I mean, it was really so much fun to watch. How did that come about? Because I mean, God, Samuel Beckett, that was one heck of a character. So just talk about that, because
Yeah.
again, I know you did the pilot, I believe,
Yeah.
but I mean, that is something, again, big. You're in this big TV series, because I mean, it got tremendous reviews when it
Yeah.
first came out.
Yeah, it was critically acclaimed, and the character I played, Sam Beckett, Dr. Death, as they called him, because he was the morgue attendant who dealt with all the dead bodies of the, the fallen in the Vietnam conflict. And again, an experience that will always be close to my heart. I mean, central to who I am as an actor. All of us are still friendly. We still see each other, at various occasions. Robert Picardo, who played Dr. Bob, was just married relatively recently. I want to say 3 or 4 years ago. And so we had a big reunion then. A bunch of us showed up in New York. John Sacred Young, the creator, passed away from brain cancer, I think 2 years ago now, around 2, maybe 3 years ago. Huge turnout again of China Beachers. And when you're doing something like that, and you can feel how important it is, and important in the sense that, it's not changing global policy, it's not ending wars, but what it was a love letter to, really, I think, everyone who's ever served the military in this country, and every man in my family until I was born were vets. My great grandfathers, I think, were both in World War II. My grandfather was in Korea. My father, my uncles were all Vietnam vets, and so they all had various kinds of experiences. And so the fact that Hamburger Hill had happened, that was great. And then the China Beach experience came about. And part of me was like, wow, maybe in another life I was really, because the funniest thing is, to this day, because of those two experiences, guys occasionally will, and now that I got the gray hair, it's sort of, happens. Hey man, don't I know you from Screaming Eagles unit number, in Da Nang in 72? And I was like, oh no, man, I'm an actor, but thank you for, oh, wow. You know what I mean? So, and of course the nurses, because China Beach was primarily about, the wonderful Dana Delaney's character, Colleen McMurphy, who was based on a real nurse who had really been in Vietnam in that experience. And pretty much it's very funny. I get people talk to me for all of the different shows I've been on, but if I can almost expect it, if I'm for some reason in a doctor's office or a hospital or whatever, a nurse of a certain age will come up and say, you know what my favorite show was? And I go, I think I do. And they'll say, Spin City. No, China Beach. Because either they were there, they knew someone who was there, or somehow, and what it also did was highlighted the struggles of another, I think, sort of underappreciated profession in our society, that of nurses. I mean, where would we be without nurses? And to this day, I have a special sort of attachment feeling to nurses. And then to learn that there's a nursing shortage and not a lot of people want to be nurses. And you go, what? How are we? So I always think nurses, teachers, cops, soldiers, people that in many ways protect us from all kinds of things are among the most underappreciated.
I agree completely. And the thing is too, Michael, the unfortunate thing about TV sometimes is there's different reasons shows get canceled. It could be they move you to a different time slot. You lose the audience that you had the first couple seasons. But the good thing about it is, I'm sure it's for you and for your former castmates, is the show is still a phenomenon after all these years. So it's become so popular after it left the air. I mean, people still love it. You have people telling you it's their favorite show. So even I think of shows, I always thought the Addams Family was good, the Munsters, and they only lasted 2 seasons. So I think sometimes
Star Trek, 3 seasons.
That's why I I never go by critics either, because most of the stuff that I've loved over the years, critics always bash and say it's
Right.
not good. So I
Yeah.
just look at the body of work, and your China Beach is still as popular as it was when it first came on in 1987, I believe.
Yep.
Or yeah.
Wait,
Or
no,
was it
88. 88. Yeah,
88. Yeah. So I mean, it's still going strong after all these years.
You know, there was first of all, the music. People talk to me about the music all the time, and oddly enough, music, because we opened with Reflections, the Diana Ross and the
Great
Supreme
song.
song.
Yeah.
Every episode featured some great either Motown hit or rock hit or whatever of the moment. You know, Creedence Clearwater Revival. I mean, you just great stuff.
It was awesome. Yeah.
Unfortunately, that kept the show out of syndication for a long time because Warner Brothers was reluctant to pay all of the royalties that it would have entailed for all of those songwriters for those songs. So people for years came up to me and they'd say, "Why? Where can I? How come I can't find it? Where is it?" Well, I'm happy to report that, and I don't remember the name of the company now, unfortunately. Wow, I'm a terrible plugger. But there's a Canadian company that produced a beautiful boxed CD set. DVD. Woo! Wow. DVD set of the entire series with music and remastered. It looks like it was shot yesterday. And I watched it through the whole thing after I got the actual package of all the episodes. Not only does it look better than when it was shot, and as I said, it looks like it could have been shot yesterday, but something about that immediacy, like it doesn't look old, makes you realize, wow, this, not only is this story sort of a never-ending one, it also applies to veterans and soldiers from all wars, certainly all American wars. And it's quite an experience. It's hard. I mean, that's the show that I think because there was such inherent heart in the show itself, in Colleen McMurphy's struggle and Beckett's struggle, it's very emotional. It's very emotional,
it is.
I can get emotional even thinking about certain scenes. Dana Delaney's performance in the pilot, to me, remains one of the best television performances of an actress I've ever seen. And she's
brilliant. Yeah.
She's great. Marg Helgenberger as Casey, the hooker with a heart, with a heart of gold. I was surrounded by, unbelievably great actors and obviously mostly actresses. Consetta Tomei, who is now godmother to one of my kids, it was an amazing experience.
And I also think you touched on it a little bit, Michael, but I don't think people realize just how important music is to TV shows and TV series, because I always felt like that's why The Wonder Years was such a popular show, because the music fit the episode. It fit it perfectly.
Yeah.
And that was the same thing with China Beach, because I'm telling you, when you're watching those shows and you're like a young kid or you're even a kid in high school or something like that, you get a part of you is like, okay, tomorrow I want to go out and write a great show, or I want to go act in that, because that music, the music really brings out the feel to the episode.
Oh boy, does it ever. And I think it's the confluence, Mike, of just great art all around. Great acting, great directing, unbelievable music, in production value. I mean, all of that stuff is on purpose. Everything you see on screen was shot and arranged and lit and choreographed in a certain way to provide this amazing experience that hopefully at its best kind of takes you out of your own world for an hour or 2 hours or whatever. And the music then plays an integral part in that process. So, I hear the strains of that our closing musical sequence, which is just pretty much violin, and it was written by an actor. It was written by John Rubinstein, who, if you guys look him up, you've seen him in a million things. Oh, and by the way, he's this amazing, brilliant musician and composer. I hear the three strains of that violin starting up, and I got to go to the next room, and because it breaks me up. It breaks me up, and it broke me up even then when the show was on. Now, of course, 30 plus years later, it's nostalgia, but you're right. It's the thing. It's the music is so critical, and I think that's why the producers ultimately didn't want to release it, because Warner Brothers was offered the chance, or they offered John Sacred Young, and John, I can't remember the other writers, but they were offered the chance to, produce a version of the series with no music.
Right.
Everybody that heard that, even actors who stood to make residuals, but we were all like, yeah, that's not, because it's not our best. It's not us at our best without that crucial component. So, yeah, I remember, I'm one of those kids, a latchkey kid. I remember theme songs to this day.
Yeah. And I always felt like too, Michael, that theme songs make the TV shows. And, we're going to get into Spin City in a second. But the one thing I kind of hated a little bit as the mid-90s came is they kind of eliminated the theme songs based on time. They wanted to show more of the episode. But I always felt like a theme song, like especially if it was a long-running series, you always kind of got excited to see what the new season was going to be like, and how and when they took the theme songs away, that was a little of a letdown for me watching TV.
A huge letdown. And for me, I mean, look, there are games built around name this theme song from this popular show. I mean, okay, so I guess recently, relatively recently, Friends would be probably one of the most popular. Everybody knows this. But and I didn't watch Friends, but what I loved about the shows that I grew up watching and the theme songs is they were really smart. Not only were they catchy, but by the end of the opening credits, you knew what the show was about. Right. So even, moving on up, we're going to the, they tell you what the show was about in the theme song.
Yeah, I mean, to this day, I could still listen to Laverne and Shirley's theme song. I mean, it's just a classic theme song. I mean, how do you not get pumped up when you hear it?
It's like you sit there and you're waiting for the theme song to start up almost more than you are the TV show, but because it's a part of the process of like, the theme song to the show I mentioned earlier, Doctor Who, which has been reinterpreted many, many times, but is the same essential song. No music, I mean, no voice, but just this sort of da-na-na, I hear it and I go, oh, okay, where? They've made it rock version, they've made like grungy, they've done all kinds of, but it's still that song. Yeah. And there's something about knowing when you turn on your devices, whatever you're gonna watch, you're gonna hear that song, and it's, oh yeah, I'm here, right there, I'm ready, let's go.
Right, exactly. So let's get to 1996, because what a year it was for you as an actor, but what a year in general it was, because think about this, okay? When Spin City came onto the air in 96 on Tuesday nights, I really believe ABC was counting on that show a lot, because they knew Monday nights, I think CBS had brought Cosby in, and they were trying to get back into the game. Yeah. Well, it was a different Cosby show.
Oh, you're right.
That's right. They brought like him and Felicia Rashad back, but it was called Cosby, and they had Everybody Loves Raymond. So I think Monday night CBS was banking on winning that, and then Thursday nights you knew NBC was always going to win. They were just going to run away with it with Seinfeld, Friends, But really, Tuesday nights was ABC's night. You had NYPD Blue, you had Spin City. The other show's escaping me. It'll come to me. So they brought Michael J. Fox in with the hope that he could really, have a good sitcom that would make Tuesday nights ABC's night. And I mean, what a cast it was, because I watched it, I'll be honest, because I saw Michael J. Fox. I loved him in Family Ties.
Of course.
But I'll tell you what, I mean, the chemistry that you and Alan had, I mean, Stewart and Carter were tremendous. But think about this too, Michael. You are one of, I can maybe count on, one hand of actors who did two successful series at the same time. I think of William Daniels when he did St. Elsewhere and Knight Rider. But it
Heather
was very,
Locklear, I guess. Did
Dynasty and Charlie,
right.
which yeah, but it was very unheard of for actors to do that. And you were on ABC, and they want to make this big push for Tuesday nights, and then HBO, Arliss, HBO was still trying to establish itself as showing TV series. So I mean, just talk about auditioning for both those parts, because I mean, I don't think there's a person anywhere that didn't love Carter on Spin City. And I mean, Stanley was tremendous on Arliss. So just talk about how it all came about.
I loved playing both those characters, and I love being a part of both shows. On the Arliss end, Robert Wool, of course, is Arliss, who gave me that great opportunity. And I'm still really close with Jim Turner, who played, oh God, I can't believe, Kirby. And Sandra Oh, who played Rita. We were the three sort of supporting characters to Robert Wool's Arliss, and we're all still really, really good friends, and that's amazing. But I auditioned for Spin City. I might have auditioned. I don't remember. It was a pilot season, though. I auditioned for Spin City, I want to say maybe a week before I auditioned for Arliss, or Arliss a week before Spin City. Somehow there were,
right.
Because when I auditioned for both, there was no sort of place in my mind where I thought, ooh, this, this could conflict time-wise, because A, I was auditioning, and B, I hadn't really considered I'd get both jobs. So the way it was told to me later, my agent at the time, the amazingly talented agent, Bob Gersh, the owner of the Gersh agency at the time, he was quite the shark in the agenting world. And from what I'm told, he sort of was able to maneuver in such a way that I was able to do both shows. Usually when an actor signs a contract as a series regular, that's it. That show owns you.
Yeah.
That network owns you until the end of the contract, or until they decide, okay, we're done with this guy. What it amounted to basically was, on Spin City, I was a series regular, and on Arliss, I was technically what they called a heavily recurring character.
But I think you're on almost 70 episodes.
I'm pretty much in, almost every episode. Not everyone, but I'm in 90,
at least 68 of the 80 episodes.
Oh yeah, if not more.
Right.
And it was great. It was the timing was perfect, because Spin City shot, say, from, I'm trying to remember now, like September through August, maybe something like that. And then Arliss would shoot over the summer in LA from August to the beginning of September. So
wow. So you never had a break, really.
Oh my God. And now Spin City shot in New York, and Arliss shot in LA. So the only hardship there was when Arliss was there, after having done, the grueling schedule of a 22 episodes, or in this case 24 episodes on Spin City, because Michael understood his health situation at the moment, and he planned it. He structured it in his deal that maybe we do more than a 22 episode order if we got picked up. So what we ended up doing was like 24 episodes a season.
Right.
So, by the end of that, it's, pretty tired. You're tired and you want a break. I'm hearing all my, Alan Ruck and Connie Britton and Richard Kind and Barry Bostwick. Oh, I'm going to France. Oh, I'm going to Belize. Oh, me and the family are going. What about you, Boatman? I'm going to LA to work on Arliss, my other show. And but it was, listen, I would have it no other way, man, and the characters in a way were
similar.
They were similar in certain ways, but they were different in ways that only really mattered to me, but that made it fun for me to play. Right. In the sense that I felt in some ways Carter was, he was gay, he was a liberal. Stanley was conservative, kind of hung up about a lot of things, and essentially both of which exist in my character. So it was just fun to be able to. I even got it down to the specifics where I would wear my mustache one way for Stanley and then wear a full goatee for Carter, just because. And people probably never even notice that stuff, but for me, that's what makes acting fun. It's like you make the choices that galvanize the character for you, and then you cross your fingers, hope for the best.
Yeah. And the thing is, though, Michael, you had to, I mean, at the time you're working, so you can't really get wrapped up into it too much. But as time went on, you had to say to yourself, wow, I was doing 2 successful series at once. So you look at it and you say, you know what? If I did nothing else the rest of my career, I always have that on my resume, and I always have that, you know, when people look me up on Wikipedia or Internet Movie Day, that I was a part of 2 successful series. One was 6 seasons, the other was 7 seasons. And let's be honest about this, and this is no disrespect to Charlie Sheen, but had Michael J. Fox stayed, that show would have went 10 years. If he was healthy, that show goes 10 years. And it's no knock at Charlie. It's just that the fans identified with Michael. And when you lose the main character like that, it's hard for the audience to stick around.
It's hard, and you're right. And I'm close to both of them. Charlie and I became friends on a different level, almost a different wavelength. I think in some ways, and I think Gary David Goldberg, who created the show with Bill Lawrence, who would later go on to create Scrubs and a lot of other shows, I think Gary recognized that in some ways, Michael J. Fox and Charlie Sheen were almost mirror images of each other in very interesting ways. Because at first, when Gary said, "Oh, the show," first of all, he told us the show was moving to LA, which, by the way, I think led to its cancellation more than even the loss of Michael, because New York City was a character in our show, and you felt it. You can't fake Central Park. You can't fake any of the iconic sort of structures and places in New York that we all know. And we shot in those places, and it looks amazing. That scene where Michael is hanging off the front end of that boat in New York Harbor and then he's doing the Leonardo DiCaprio, I'm the king of the world kind of thing. First of all, really happened. He really did that. I remember us standing back there going, "Oh my God, he's really hanging out there." And it's one of the greatest. And then it pans up to this unbelievable shot of the New York City skyline and everything you see there. And wow, you think this is more than a sitcom. I don't know what, it's an experience.
Right.
So I always say that when the show moved to LA, because Michael had to leave and they had, Gary Goldberg had chosen Charlie to replace him, the show really lost. It lost 2 major characters, Michael J. Fox, but it also lost New York City, because the Warner Brothers backlot, sorry, as convincing as it can be, it's just not the same. It's not the same. So Charlie did his best, and I mean, Charlie was nominated for an Emmy for that. Well,
I think he won a Golden Globe.
Or a Golden Globe, he won.
He did. Yeah.
So, and he and I remained friends as well, and so, yeah, it's sad to think, if Michael had been, healthy and up for it, we would have been able to, But the reality is now, and as a friend and as a person who's remained my friend, you see a person struggling with a health situation, and by the time you really become friends, you care more about their health, obviously, even than the job you're on. You know what I mean? You hope the job goes on, but you also want this person to be able to survive and be well and everything. And so Michael stayed involved with the show as a producer, and he made a couple of guest appearances, I think, in the next
season 6.
And then so we moved to LA, and then Charlie took over, and it was its own, it had its own kind of magic in an interesting way. But Charlie could have been, if we had started the show, well, I mean, my God, Charlie went on to be, forget about it. Not only was he was already a movie star by the time he came into the Spin City world. That was past him. He was, he had done that years before. after Spin City, he goes on to Two and a Half Men, one of the most successful sitcoms of all time. So, it all worked out the way it seemed to, that it needed to work out.
Right. And the thing is, two things. One, I always looked at Michael J. Fox, even when he was on Family Ties, is like behind the scenes, there wasn't a nicer guy in Hollywood. I mean,
True.
He seemed like the nicest guy. Anytime I heard him on interviews, whatever it was, just the most polite human being you could ever think of. And even when he was dealing with this Parkinson's, which was terrible, he never like once asked anybody to feel sorry for him. I mean, he basically was almost apologetic to the cast that he had to leave the show because he knew it was going to affect them. He was always thinking about others before himself. And I always thought that was really remarkable about the person he was.
It's true. And he did apologize, to us at one point. And, I remember for some reason, I think we were in his dressing room, Connie, Britton, maybe all of us. I think Barry Bostwick got up, Barry's 6'4". He's this enormous human being. Gave Michael a hug. It's like, bro, why are you apologizing? We just want you to be okay. Yeah. But it's a testament to what you're saying, which is, he's unbelievable. And I don't know if it's because he's Canadian, but it's not just that, because I also find that a lot of times, I think the chemistry in a cast, in any given cast, can be heavily influenced by how they actually get along, off screen. Right. And Alexander Chaplin, who played James in the first 4 seasons, I talked to at least once every couple of weeks. Richard Kind, I probably talked to. Funny man, too. Once a week. Alan Ruck, we email back and forth. I live in New York. He lives in LA, and now his great success on Succession. And Barry Bostwick, sort of our older, not old Barry. I didn't say old, older. Cranky California uncle with the perfect tan and this flaming white hair. And so our chemistry off camera was as important as what happened on screen. And Michael often said what he loved about the show, apart from his role, was knowing that you could put kind of any combination of any 2 or 3 of us together with him not in a scene. And still, as they discovered, obviously, with me and Alan Ruck, but also Richard Kind and Alan, or Richard and Sandy Gaberman, or and I even thought, what was it, Carla Gugino. I thought she was tremendous. I was kind of disappointed when they kind of wrote her out, but I thought was, they did it because they wanted Mike to focus more on his staff. Right. But I really thought she was awesome too in that first season. Oh my God. So awesome, and such a wonderful actress. And I was sorry to see her go, and I think we all were. And but then of course she's gone on to even greater success. And so, but you're right. The notes that I remember hearing was that the audience, back in the days when they did demographics and screenings, I don't know if they even do that stuff anymore, but the audience really they liked seeing Mike with Ashley, Carla's character, but they loved seeing him in the office with all the wacky, characters he worked with. Man, that you could even feel that in the live recordings. It was like people just sort of, and you listen. Michael J. Fox walks on screen, and he's one of the 3 people I've met in my life. The other 2 being Muhammad Ali and Sidney Poitier, who can walk into a restaurant in real life, just walk into a restaurant and people just go, oh, and just spontaneously start applauding. Yeah. It's because in Michael's case, he has done so much to raise awareness about Parkinson's disease. He's driven unbelievable amounts of money, not only from himself, but just from the world, by willing to sort of share his struggle with it toward all neurological diseases. And so, but then you put on the fact that he's both Marty McFly and Alex P. Keaton. Yeah. Forget about it. People just lose their minds. And they loved him whenever he and Ashley were together. But you could feel the energy change in the room when they'd switch back to the city. You could feel it. And that made it fun.
and you really saw just how funny and talented the other actors were, because I remember Alan in why am I drawing Fearless Bueller's Day
Sure,
Off, and he
sure.
was funny in that, but not
Yeah,
as funny as he would be in Spin City. And
yeah.
like I said, your character and his character, I will never forget that boiler room
Oh,
scene when you guys were stuck in the boiler room.
yeah.
And one of the funniest moments is Carter's ready to faint, and Mike finds them, and your character just goes, "You mean to tell me we're finally free?" It was just one of those great moments. And I mean, that's the thing
Yeah.
about that show, is like every time you thought it was getting serious, there would
Yeah.
always be a little funny moment in there as it
Yeah.
was being serious.
To break it up. Well, I think, Bill Lawrence was our head writer, and Gary David Goldberg was what they used to call the grandfather of the show. He was the well-known, successful executive producer that created Family Ties, for God's sake, and Brooklyn
Yeah.
Bridge, which was a critical succce.
And that was a great show too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But Gary had a sensibility that I don't think is really still around today. Things have changed, sort of. Gary wrote on shows like Mary Tyler Moore, and what was it? Was that what her show was called? Mary Tyler Moore. I mean, the Mary,
Yeah.
the Mary Tyler Moore show, whatever. I think he wrote on All in the Family. I mean, just so I miss that sort of old school sensibility. I think we had it, but the reason I say that is because it then led to a certain sort of kind of comedy. The thing that, and I'll simplify it by saying, the thing that Gary David Goldberg always liked about Michael J. Fox the most, he said this many times publicly during Family Ties, was he said he has Jewish timing, Jewish comic timing. And I'm not sure that a lot of people even would understand that reference today.
Right.
But back then in the 90s, when you still had all of these great, older, Jewish writers from old shows or creative, Mel Brooks who's still around today, of course.
Yeah.
But and when that style of comedy, that kind of timing was a little closer to us in time than it is now. Every scene ended with a punch, and I love it. I just love that style, and it blows my mind that I cannot tell you how many people mentioned that episode to me. When you and Stuart were in the boiler room, and I go,
"Oh, it's classic, man. It really is."
Yeah, but you never. I guess my point is, you never know when you're doing it that it's going to be this thing.
Yeah,
I mean, you feel
like,
a certain way. This is fun, or my character's never gotten to do this, but you just never know what's going to pop in the public's imagination, and people mention that one to me a lot. My particular favorites one of my favorites was the Thanksgiving episode from season 2, I think.
2 or 3. It might have been 2. Yeah.
It's just so silly. And and also it's another one of those episodes where I got to work with my really good friend now, Alexander Gaberman.
Yeah.
Now Chaplin. He changed his name, changed his real name.
Yeah.
To honor a family member of his, not Charlie Chaplin, but another Chaplin. But he and I had these ridiculous scenes under the table doing puppets with Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
To this day, I don't know why. Just that thought of that setup still cracks me up. It's just, you know what it is? That show was so great. Bill Lawrence and our great writers were so great at picking out things that we as actors did well.
Yeah.
And then would funnel, and we wouldn't even know they were necessarily watching, or that they'd heard a story that we might have told to someone else, or what? How do you know that story? Because you read it, it's in the script, and you're like, wait a minute, how? But they were brilliant at that. So they knew sort of all of our strengths, in a great way. And, it was a great cocktail to make a great show.
Right. And I think this too, Michael, I was thinking about it. Most of the time it's always fun. There's some stressful days, of course, but it's always hard for two reasons. One, when a series is wrapping up and they make that final episode because you're saying goodbye to everybody. And then if somebody leaves the show throughout the series and you have to do an episode for them. And I really felt when Michael's last episode, I really felt like you guys were talking to him like he was Michael J. Fox and not, Mike, the character. It really felt like, I mean, just talk about how tough that was his last day on set.
Well, he told us at the beginning of the third season, somewhere in the third season,
that season 4 would be his last. Yeah.
Right. And he was going to go public in the third season. So by the time season 4 began, of course, all the stories were, Michael J. Fox, has Parkinson's. Again, like I said, it's tough because it's a friend by this point, and not only a friend, but a friend that you've enjoyed success with and you've had amazing experiences with and because of, in his case. So by the time that final episode rolled around, you couldn't, we have a table reading every Monday to read the script, and then the writers come back on Tuesday with changes, and you'd have that table reading. It's just, there's not a dry eye in the house.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he's so professional. And this, Mike and I worked together on The Good Fight. I think he and I worked together twice on that show.
Yeah.
With his great character that he played on that show, whose name I don't remember, but his character had an unspecified neurological disorder. And he came before me when my character was a judge for that brief amount of time. And watching him, not only, of course, brought back tons of memories, but sort of looped around back to your question, which is, okay, this is going to change our show, but this has changed his life.
Right.
And so you're mixed because, of course, you want your work to continue. And, all of us are family men. We're all parents by then. So you worry, oh my God, is the show going to last or whatever? But with Michael being involved, you suddenly are opening up kind of a different sort of perception in many ways, because like on the few times that he was on The Good Fight, he'd been on The Good Wife as well, but he and I never worked together until The Good Fight. I feel,
no, you're back. Yep.
Okay. He's not feeling sorry for himself. He's moving on. And as much as you want to let him know that you support him and you're there and you get it and and you love him.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let's do a great show. Thank you. Love it. Appreciate it. I mean, that's him. Right. So that last episode, as you definitely came to work. I mean, there's a scene where he and I speak, and I tell him he's my best friend, and it's been an honor to work with him. The writers very cannily, if you will, understood that.
Right.
And they knew it was going to be tough for me to say the lines I have to say to him at the end, which involve, hey, I love you and all of that sort of stuff. They knew that it was going to be hard for the other actors to deal with what was actually happening. But they trusted that we were strong enough and a strong enough ensemble to be able to funnel all that into the actual product, if you will. Again, a word that I hate, but into the actual show.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man, saying my lines in his and my final scene, was very difficult. And at the end, I think when they show him sort of running out, as we do the standing ovation for Mike was, everyone was just wrecked. And he's just there. He's Michael J. Fox. He's loving everybody. He's pointing. He's himself.
And as bittersweet as it is, though, Michael, at the same time, that moment is always in TV history. So if a Spin City fan goes and watches the season finale of season 4, they get to see all that emotion. And it's sad, but at the same time, it's great for TV at the same point because, with all the goofing around and all the, insults you make at each other, like for fun on the show, then you see that these characters genuinely love each other as they do as, professionals.
Yeah. Which I think is which I think is smart. It's smart writing. It's smart, however, however it comes about and comes together. Ultimately, you want to, yeah, it's fun when people saw that Stewart and I hated each other for the first 3 seasons, but kind of really always loved each other.
Yeah.
Because there were elements about us that were similar, things that were radically different, things that made Stewart terrified, things that made me outraged. Look, there was talk about our 2 characters having a spinoff, and we did this. I wish I could find it, and maybe one of your audience members knows where it is online, but there was one season where we filmed, we did an exact replication, Alan, Ruck, and I, of the opening sequence of The Odd Couple. With the music and everything, with Tony Randall, now me, sticking my umbrella through the cigar and looking at it, and as you see on The Odd Couple, and including the music. I never, ever, I think I saw it aired once or twice. I never saw it again. I would, oh my God, I would love to find that, because it was such a brilliant comparison. And people had started saying, I mean, there really were rumblings like, hey, you guys, what would that be like? Maybe you just were hearing it. Alan and I weren't making that up. It was just sort of, yeah, well, shows have spinoffs, and I could see this one, didn't happen, didn't work out that way, but
that would have been something, though. That would have been good for
the ingredients. Yeah, the ingredients were all there for sure.
Right. And you talked about writing and good writing, Michael, and you've done a lot of writing over the last several years. Just talk about that, because, I mean, you see that a lot. Actors branch out, they direct, they produce, they, like I mentioned, Ron Howard before, then they write. So how enjoyable has writing been to you?
Oh, man. Writing is enjoyable when you get to the end, for me.
Yeah.
There's no pleasure greater than going the end, but only realizing that's just the beginning. You now have rewrites and edits and cuts, and maybe you submit it to a magazine before it's really ready, and an editor spots that and says, you may need to buff that part up, or a little bit less of that, and finding out they're always right. People say, like people who say the customer's always right. I've learned in writing fiction and nonfiction as well, but that the editor is always right, because they're objective and they see the work from, a different perspective, whereas you're too close and you love every word, and every word was fought over in your mind. But I started writing, so Spin City was 96. I started writing probably in 1994, because I had a freakish household accident that put me on my couch for 12 weeks while I had to. Yeah. I'll tell you if you want, but it's horrible. And when they ask and I tell them what happened, because it is truly a freakish accident. All right, I'll tell you. What happened was, in 1994, I believe, I was taking out the trash. This is when I lived in LA. Unbeknownst to me, we had guests. I was out of the town. I don't know where I was, but I was out of town. And our guests had used some of my wife's, ceramic plates. Oh, for Thanksgiving, because Thanksgiving had come around that time, and they used our home. We were out of town. Our guests had Thanksgiving there. Well, in putting everything away, one of them dropped this ceramic turkey platter, I guess, and, broke it, and they swept it up, put it in the trash. That night, before I go to bed, my wife says, "Oh, take out the trash," because that's how my life works, or used to work anyway. But I go, okay, it's midnight. I take out the trash. I grab everything. I walk the trash out. I put at that time our trash was next to our garage. I hold up the trash bag like that, and I turn, because at that time we had raccoons or possums, all kind of stuff in that part of Southern California going on. and I heard something kind of skittering around. And as I turned, I had the bag down by my lower leg. I turned to see this thing, nothing out there. When I turned back, the bag swung, hit me in my Achilles tendon. And what hit me in my Achilles tendon was the sharp edge of the turkey platter.
Oh,
yeah.
Man.
Yeah, like pow. And I immediately knew what happened. Because I first of all went into shock. Like, what? I thought someone had snuck into my garage and stabbed me. And the next thing I knew, I put my right foot down to take a step, and my whole leg went just kind of wobble. And I didn't even, I just went, oh my God, Achilles tendon. What? Because that's where it hit me.
Yeah.
I go to the hospital. It turned out that the Achilles tendon was only partially ruptured, not severed, which was good news.
Yeah, that would have hurt a lot. Yeah.
Because so what they end up doing in that case is they give you some pain meds. They bind up your foot so that you can't move it. And and 12 weeks allows the tendon to grow back together, which, wow, I didn't know that, but okay. So no surgery. But during that time, as I was struggling with the inevitable depression and boredom, and I had just lost out on a huge TV show opportunity that I thought I was going to get and wound up not getting. But so I was going through depression, and a couple of friends of mine came over, one of whom is Don Cheadle. Don and a couple of other buddies of ours came over just to visit and say, how you doing? And I said, they saw that I was clearly depressed. And Don, who has so many more talents than people know him just from his acting. Don's a great singer. He's a musician.
Yeah.
He plays, I know he plays a horn. I can't remember which one. It's not saxophone, maybe clariphone, something like that. But anyway, he says, what are you doing? I said, nothing. What do you mean, what am I doing? I'm sitting on my ass. I can't walk. And he goes, well, you got to do something creative. And I go, well, I'm an actor. I can't act, man. I was so defiant in my misery. He goes, well, you got to do something else. And I'm like, what, man? I don't know anything. He says, well, have you ever wanted to write a song or, make a piece of pottery or write a book or something? And I went, well, I guess I had thought about a screenplay. I don't know why that's the sick me, but that's the person that comes out when I think about me at that time. He said, well, write something, idiot. And then they left. So I sat there, and he was right. I couldn't walk. Right. I wasn't going to be able to walk for 12 weeks. And after 12 weeks, it was going to be weeks of therapy, PT. So right around that time, laptops had been a thing for maybe only a couple of years or so, where, everybody had them. And I said, oh, well, maybe I'll write a screenplay. I want to say 6 or 8 weeks later, I had the screenplay written. I typed the end, and it was one of the most amazing moments in my life, Mike, because it was the first time I had ever been a part of something creative that didn't require anybody else's permission. I didn't need an agent. I didn't need a manager. I didn't need a director saying, stop, cut, do it this way. Nothing. I could just sit there on my little keyboard and write stuff.
Right.
I got this screenplay ready, and it wasn't until maybe a month later that I realized it was totally a ripoff of the X-Men. But okay, when I saw it, it was like, wait, because I'm a comic book guy. Wait, this is the X-Men. Oh, crap. But it was okay because it had, it lit the fire in there. So I was able to toss that away and then really start writing. And I started getting, positive sort of feedback pretty soon. I sold a couple of short stories, and I've been working on this novel idea about aliens and aliens invading Earth, which is kind of funny now considering, everything we're hearing about in the news with Congress. That never sold, but, I was in now. I was submitting things, selling stories, and subsequently I've written dozens of short stories and 4 novels, one of which was not sold, but I love it. It's that thing that I know, and I struggle with what they call writer's block sometimes. Right. But I find that writer's block for me mostly involves being too lazy to actually sit down. Now, understand what I just said. being too lazy to sit down in a chair and
Yeah.
just write. Martin
Right.
Mull of all people. I worked with Martin Mull on the Jackie Thomas Show, which is a show that only lasted a season,
Yeah.
with Tom Arnold.
Yeah.
And produced by Roseanne, who I love. He said, I was talking about writing even then, and he said, well, my friend, I'll tell you the best advice I ever got. If you're going to write, sit your butt down in a chair every day and write. Doesn't matter what comes out. Just, you got to form the habit of writing. And at the time I said, well, that seems overly simplistic. What about my emotions? What about, my feelings of uselessness and doom? And, what about, he's really right. He's really right. When I finally realized that he was right, it became, sit down. Yeah, you're not going to write War and Peace that day. And the process is long and drawn out, even in the best circumstances of writing a story or writing a novel, until you get it just right. And then even when you think you got it just right, maybe an editor says no anyway. But you only get to that point by actually sitting and doing it. And so what it also did for me, Mike, I think was solidify the through line sort of between acting and writing for me is this. It's both storytelling. They're both, as a writer, you're embodying someone's story. I mean, I'm sorry, as an actor, you're embodying a story that someone else wrote. But as a writer, you're creating the story.
Yeah.
And of course, to any person that has a God complex like I do, I'm gonna make these characters' lives miserable. Only I can save them. You know what I mean? So I love it, and in some ways, I tell people I think what I heard way back in my living room in Chicago when I was watching those PBS shows, I think I was hearing language that was written, of course, by Shakespeare or Arthur Miller, and because I've always had a facility with words and language, just even as a kid, because I read so much. I love to read. I still love to read. I usually have multiple novels going when I'm reading, at one time. That sort of all just sort of lit that fire in my head, like, oh yeah, writing. You write this stuff and then you get it right, and then the world sees it or not. Yeah. And but you got a story. And you made the story, and it doesn't take your agent. Like I said, it doesn't take you having to wait by the phone for that special call where someone says, you got the gig. Nope. The gig is getting up, sitting your ass down with your favorite cup of coffee or hot chocolate or whatever, and writing another page that day. So it's a challenge. I don't follow my own advice all the time, because I'm a parent. I got 4 kids, all of whom are adults now. 3 dogs. So just life. But I do find that I'm usually happiest when I'm able to actually sit there, get a page or 2 out that day, and then it's like what I used to feel at the end of a successful audition. I'm alive. I'm a real person. My life makes sense in those moments. So yeah, people ask which I prefer. To me, they're because I'm acting even as I'm writing. Right. I'm acting out what the characters are doing and saying and thinking. So,
well, you brought that odd couple up between Stewart and Carter. That could be something you could write about. It'd be a nice little story.
Yeah. What happened to these now senior citizens?
But Michael, let me ask you this: 2 things. One, what has been most rewarding about your career? And number 2, I always ask this when somebody's been on multiple series.
Yeah.
And you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but if you had to pick one, or, if you had to put on your plaque, like a baseball player puts a cap on, the team he played for, would it be China Beach, Spin City, or would it be Arliss?
Wow. It's so hard. Because I love.
To me, I think it would just be a blank hat, because I think you were so important to all 3 series that you couldn't put one ahead of the other. That's my opinion.
It's hard. It is hard. And I have different criteria for each show. Spin City, I laughed in my real life with these guys so hard. I mean, part of what made the magic of that show happen was we love to crack each other up in real life. You know,
Right.
at lunch, we'd all be in a green room, and Mike Fox would say, "Hey, Boatman, do that thing where you about the flying saucer," or "Hey, Ruck, do the thing." You know what I mean? And we freaking laugh. And what was brilliant about it is then somehow it would wind up. Later, I think I realized it was Michael sort of saying, "Boatman told this story the other day," because he was, he was over the writers and every
Right.
every writers meeting. So in terms of fun, I would have to say Spin City. In terms of heart, I tell you, I hear the first three notes of that theme song, and again, I got to get some Kleenex because I'm gone. So, and then with Arliss, I'm gonna say it was because it was a smaller show and there were only four regulars.
Yeah.
There was a great feeling of, I don't know, it was very comforting in that experience. I think because I was really close to the other actors. Sandra, of course, who's gone on to tremendous success, and Jim Turner, who's great and doing all kinds of things. So fun, man. That was fun and also challenging. And, also it was cable. So
Right.
I had grown used after China Beach and Spin City and even the Jackie Thomas Show, and then pilots. I'd done a few pilots that never got made. I got used to network restrictions. You can't curse. You can't. Well, Arliss, you can drop as many F-bombs as the writer demanded or whatever. So it was fun, and it's a silly thing to remember, but there was a kind of a freedom there. We could improvise more, and they would listen to us. So in terms of the creative acting thing, I'm gonna say Arliss.
Right.
Really, yeah. All like I said, all three had great moments for me and great opportunities. So, but I sort of think of each one of them as a okay, this was where I needed to learn more about the business, or this is where I needed to focus on breaking bad habits, or you know what I mean? And
right.
Each one of those shows presented different opportunities like that. It's a very nebulous, artsy fartsy way of thinking, but.
And then finally, it's hard to pick one, but what would you say has been the most rewarding thing to you about your career? I mean, obviously, listen, you made a lot of money, but I would think that there's got to be more to it. It's got to be, the whole body of work, the relationships you made and things like that.
The most rewarding thing, absolutely, I can tell you, Mike. There was something about, so the character I just played on The Good Fight for 6 seasons was a very conservative guy, Trump supporter, all of it. I got a lot of people, positive and negative, saying things to me, yay or nay on the street. And that was fun. Sometimes it was scary because, the way things are today, everything is so polarized, and I'd have people, admittedly mentally disturbed folks, claiming me, like, on both sides. Well, we know you don't really believe that stuff, or you're the kind of guy that absolutely supports him in real life, or whatever. And my whole point was, guys, it's a job. Yeah. You're not talking to the character. You're talking to the actor, the person who has a whole other life. But along those lines, I during Spin City, I want to say maybe 4 or 5 people, men and women, came to me at one point and told me essentially that seeing Carter on TV every week and that he was popular and people liked him and laughed, that saved their lives. Because, like one gentleman told me, I grew up in a small town in the Midwest and I was gay, but I didn't know what that meant. And my family were religious and I didn't think there was anybody else like me in the world. And then at my lowest point, when I really was thinking of taking my own life, I happened to turn on an episode of your show and there you were. And man, to this day, that, you
can't put a price tag on that. Yeah.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
You can't, you think this was just a gig. I mean, this was a job. I loved it. I loved the character. I didn't I wasn't planning on making social statements. The character does, but what am I saying this week, guys? And then you realize that, and it makes sense, because the same thing happened to me as a kid. I watched shows that affected my worldview to this day. I believe certain things because of television. And so the idea that art of any kind can reach out and affect people's emotions and hearts and lives in a positive way, that gets me every time. And again, like I said, because I experience certain things. For instance, I'm always proud of the fact that the characters I'm chosen to play or that I gravitate to are, possess a certain dignity or a certain way, I don't know what to say. Dignity is the word because Gary David Goldberg, again, who created Spin City with Bill Lawrence, he said to me one day, you know why we cast you as Carter Boatman? And I said, why? And he said, dignity. Everything you do, you always have such dignity. And that's another one of those moments where it's like, I'm just trying to. But look, today, as a man, as a father, as an African American, I sort of look at how important images are. And I'm proud to say as a dad that I can pretty much point my kids to anything I've been in. I mean, I did an episode of Hannah Montana. That's all my kids really care about. Nothing, oh, you're that kind of actor. Yeah. Hey, guys, meanwhile, schools and trips and everything, But okay, I did Hannah Montana, so now I'm a real actor. But also in my body of work, I never did anything that embarrassed me or embarrassed, I never played against the things that I value. Your intellect, your ability to communicate, and your heart. Ultimately, are you, a decent person? I don't know. And I would love to play a villain. One of the greatest critical reactions I ever got, I did one episode of Criminal Minds to this day. Because Criminal Minds, all those shows are on constantly.
Oh yeah.
I played a serial rapist, and I loved it because I never ever got to be the bad guy. Holy mackerel, boy, do people still to this day come up to me and go, "You horrible person." I go, "Wow, one episode, one show." But the greatest thing, obviously, is first to be able to support my family and all of that stuff, but to be able to contribute in some way to an appreciation of you can be smart, you can be erudite, you can be funny, and it's all part of the human experience, and it's all a part of what we share, you know what I mean, as human beings. And so I think what I'm proudest of, having said that, is I've been able to flip back and forth between comedies and dramas. I don't have a favorite, because I think the job is essentially the same, to sell the character, to make it real.
Yeah.
And also it's provided a kind of versatility that, like if people are considering me, they don't, no one says, "Oh, Boatman can't do comedy," or, "Oh, I don't know, does he, has he ever done a drama?" My God, on China Beach, So I think the variety and the potential of all of those parts, and that I was able to, bring some of that to life, is what I'm proudest of.
That's a terrific answer, Michael. And this, like I said early when the show started, it was a real honor for me. I feel so privileged to have been able to interview you and get to talk to you. And I mean, I just had a blast. We almost went 2 hours, and
oh wow, look,
I could have kept going. And I really do applaud you for the career you've had. It's been a Hall of Fame career. And I really do appreciate you taking the time to give me a few minutes. So thank you for that. And congratulations on, like I said, a Hall of Fame career, because you just had an extraordinary career in TV.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. And good luck on the show. I watched some episodes. It's really good. I'm honored and grateful that you invited me on.
Well, no doubt about it. And I've been trying to get you for a few years. And this is just, like I said, an honor for me. And folks, you know, when you think of Michael Boatman, I mean, you've seen him since 1986 if you followed his career. And I mean, look at the body of work. I mean, how many guys could say they've been in 4 different series and had a run like he's had? I mean, you know, you look at guys like Dick Van Dyke, they didn't even have 16 years of TV series. And this guy had, you know, about 25. It's unbelievable what he's done. He's just a talent that's been here forever. I mean, we saw him on Spin City, China Beach, you know, Arliss. I mean, The Good Fight, you name it, everything. This guy has done it all. And the thing that I find most remarkable about him is he never forgot where he came from. He still talks about his years, you know, when he was at Western Illinois University. He talks about the friendships he's made and the people that have impacted his life. And he may be a phenomenal actor, but he's an even better person. For In the Spotlight, I'm Mike Kenichi saying good night, everyone.
Thanks, Mike.